GXD Expose Update, the saga continues, intro. What if I told you that behind the polished branding of GXD Adventures, the supposed community hub for players and fans, lies a carefully constructed illusion? An illusion built on shifting names, half-truths, and invasive practices disguised as safety measures. What if the person at the center of all of this wasn't being transparent at all, but instead was hiding behind aliases, rewriting rules on the fly, and demanding your biometric data while telling you it was all for your protection? This isn't some paranoid conspiracy. I have screenshots, conversations, and firsthand reports that paint a picture of how GXD has been operating his server. And the picture is ugly. This expose isn't just about hypocrisy, though there's plenty of that. It isn't just about sloppy moderation, though that's everywhere too. This is about something bigger: accountability. When someone creates a space where they claim to protect their community, especially when minors could be involved, there are real responsibilities. And if they fail to meet those responsibilities, if they instead twist rules to suit their needs, if they hide behind fake names, if they create loopholes for friends, and if they demand unsafe personal information from strangers, then we have to call it what it is. This is not safety. This is not leadership. This is control. And today I'm going to break it down for you in detail, from the alias switch to Slade, to the fake age verification system, to the sponsor loophole, to the privacy violations, contradictions, and the lies that stack one on top of another like a house of cards. So buckle up, because we're going deep into the world of GXD Adventures. This is an expose that GXD doesn't want you to see, and by the end, you'll understand exactly why. Section 1. The alias game. Let's start with the alias. In the world of online communities, identity matters. Transparency matters. When you put yourself in the position of running a server, especially one with NSFW elements, especially one that has strict 18 plus only rules, you are claiming responsibility. You are presenting yourself as the leader, the gatekeeper, the one ensuring everything runs safely. But GXD doesn't do that. What we've uncovered is that he's been using multiple names, multiple identities, all under the same account. The most obvious example is the switch to Slade. Here's what the screenshots show. Applicants to the server are contacted by someone calling themselves Slade. He introduces himself as the one conducting verification interviews. Sounds official, right? Professional even. Except there's just one problem. Slade is GXD. It's not a different account. It's not a new person brought in to handle the onboarding process. It's the exact same account that used to be branded as GXD Rev G and is now branded as GXD Adventures. And yet this same account is pretending to be someone else, pretending to be Slade. That's not transparency. That's not leadership. That's deception. Why would someone do this? The answer is obvious. Plausible deniability. If something goes wrong with the verification process, if a minor slips through, if someone feels uncomfortable, if there are accusations of misconduct, GXD can shrug and say, "Oh, that wasn't me. That was Slade." But you and I both know that's a lie. It's a mask, a fig leaf of accountability designed to blur the lines of responsibility. And it doesn't stop there. At one point, GXD even claimed that his so-called studio team all share one computer, all posting from the same account. Think about how absurd that sounds. In the digital age where every person has a phone or a PC, where Discord accounts are free to make, are we supposed to believe that an entire team shares one computer and one Discord login? No, that's not a real explanation. That's an excuse that makes it nearly impossible to know who's responsible for any action in the server, because by his own rules, it could be anyone. And yet the evidence shows it's still him, the same account, the same person, just hiding under a different name. This alias shuffle is important because it reveals something about how GXD operates. He doesn't want accountability. He doesn't want transparency. He wants control without responsibility. He wants authority without consequences. And when you're dealing with sensitive issues like age verification, when you're running a community that includes NSFW elements, that kind of behavior isn't just sloppy, it's dangerous. By calling himself Slade, by renaming the account, by inventing stories about shared computers, GXD is trying to make it harder to pin responsibility on him. But screenshots don't lie. Evidence doesn't vanish just because you slap a new name on your profile. And this is just the beginning. Because if the alias game shows us how GXD hides responsibility, the next section shows us how he abuses responsibility. And that's where things get even worse. Section 2. The Fake Age Gate. Now that we've unpacked the alias game, the deception of Slade, let's look at what that alias was actually being used for. The so-called verification system. Because this right here is where things cross the line from sloppy to outright dangerous. From the screenshots and first-hand accounts, here's how it works. Step 1. An applicant gets a DM from Slade. Remember, that's just GXD in disguise. Step 2. They're asked to prove they're real in 18+. Step 3. Instead of any legitimate system, the applicant is told to hop on webcam or microphone and perform basic actions. Look up, look down, wave your arm. Step 4. In some cases, they're asked to use their microphone to speak, just to prove their voice is real. That's it. That's the entire age verification process. No ID check, no third-party verification, no compliance with Discord's policies. Just a crude, made-up system of waving and nodding on camera. Why this is a problem? At first glance, some people might think, well, at least they're checking something. But here's the truth. What they're doing is worse than doing nothing. Why? Because this system creates a false sense of security. Members think they're entering a server that's been carefully verified. They think, oh, I passed the check, so everyone else here must be a safe, verified adult too. That's a lie. There's nothing about look up, look down that proves someone's age. Demands invasive data. Let's call this what it is. Biometric collection. Your face, your voice, those are biometric identifiers under multiple privacy laws. Even if GXD claims we don't store it, the fact is, the demand itself is invasive, unnecessary, and unsafe. Fails the only standard that matters. If you're going to run an age-restricted server, there's only one method that holds up: ID verification. Government ID third-party compliance. Period. Anything else is just smoke and mirrors. So what GXD has built is a fake age gate, a pretend wall that looks like protection but is actually made of paper. The trust loophole. And it gets even worse, because even this fake system isn't applied consistently. In direct messages, GXD admits that friends can skip verification if vouched for. If an existing member says, yeah, this person's fine, then suddenly there's no need for webcams, no need for microphones, no need for waving your arm like a child in gym class. Think about what that means. On one hand, he's demanding biometric data from strangers, invading their privacy just to enter. On the other hand, he's letting people completely bypass the system if they know someone inside. So which is it? Either the rule matters or it doesn't. Either it's about safety or it's about control. The contradiction speaks for itself. It's not about safety. It's not about protecting members. It's about creating the illusion of authority, demanding compliance from some, while quietly letting others slide. Why this is dangerous? There are 3 major dangers here. Risk to minors. If all it takes is a friend vouch to skip verification, minors can and will slip through, especially if older members are careless or complicit. And remember, this is a server with NSFW content in restricted channels. That's not just risky, that's liability. Risk to members' privacy. People are being pressured into exposing their faces and voices to strangers under the guise of verification. There are no privacy safeguards, No policy about storage. No explanation of who sees it, who records it, or how it's handled. In the wrong hands, that data can be exploited. Risk to Discord itself. Discord's terms of service don't allow servers to run invasive or unsafe verification systems. By demanding biometric data while simultaneously letting minors slip through via the sponsor loophole, GXD is putting the entire server in violation of Discord's rules. One report could trigger enforcement. The psychology of control. Here's the part that really sticks with me. GXD doesn't have a real system. He doesn't have compliance. He doesn't have a legitimate framework. What he has is a ritual, a little performance designed to make you think he has authority. When he says, look up, look down, wave your arm, it's not proving anything about your age. It's proving whether you'll follow instructions. It's a power test, not a safety check. And when he lets friends skip the ritual, it shows the truth. It's not about protecting anyone. It's about reinforcing a hierarchy where GXD decides who bends and who gets a free pass. That's not community safety, that's manipulation. The evidence speaks, and we have the evidence. Screenshots showing the exact instructions given to applicants, the admission that no IDs are checked, the friend sponsorship loophole, the contradiction between public rules and private enforcement. This is the heart of the expose, because once you see how weak and invasive the fake age gate really is, everything else falls into place. The alias Slade, that's just a mask to distance himself from responsibility. The studio computer excuse, that's just a smokescreen to blur accountability. The verification system, that's just theater. Invasive, unsafe, and ultimately meaningless. And here's the kicker. While demanding faces, voices, names, and dates of birth from applicants, GXD insists that it's all to prevent lawsuits. But in reality, it does the opposite. By collecting biometric data without consent frameworks, by allowing minors to slip through loopholes, by violating Discord's TOS, GXD is creating more liability for himself, for his server, and for everyone involved. That's why this matters. Because it's not just hypocrisy, it's risk, it's danger, and it's being passed off as safety. Section 3. Contradictions and loopholes. At this point, you might be thinking, okay, maybe the webcam checks are flawed, maybe the alias is shady, but at least the rules are clear. At least the rules say no under 18. That must count for something, right? Wrong. Because the rules are only as good as the enforcement. And with GXD, the enforcement isn't just inconsistent, it's actively contradictory. The public rulebook. Let's start with what everyone sees. On the application page and in the server rules, it's written in bold terms. No under 18 members. That sounds responsible. That sounds like a community leader who understands the importance of keeping NSFU content away from minors. On paper, it looks like GXD is doing the right thing. But the moment you step behind the curtain, you see the truth. The private admissions in private DMs, GXD admits that if an applicant has a friend already inside the server who can vouch for them, then they can skip the verification process entirely. Read that again. If you're vouched for, you don't have to show your face. You don't have to prove your age. You don't have to go through the ridiculous look up, look down, wave your arm routine. You just walk right in. This is what I call the sponsor loophole. It means the very rule that looks strict and protective on the surface is full of holes in practice. It means that minors could easily be ushered in as long as they have a friend already on the inside, willing to give them a pass. Why this contradiction matters. This isn't a small slip-up. This is a major red flag. Think about it. On one hand, GXD is demanding that strangers expose their faces and voices, putting their privacy at risk. On the other hand, he's letting other applicants bypass the whole process with a single vouch. So which is it? Either safety matters or it doesn't. Either everyone has to follow the same rules or nobody does. The truth is, this contradiction shows that the rules aren't about safety at all. They're about control. Because when enforcement is selective, the rules become a tool of convenience. They can be used to pressure strangers into compliance, while friends and allies get a free ride. That's not leadership. That's favoritism. The dangers of the sponsor loophole. Now let's talk about why this loophole is dangerous. Minors can enter. The biggest risk is obvious. Minors can and will get in. If all it takes is a friend saying, "Don't worry, I know them," then there's no barrier at all. And since this server allows NSFW channels under age restrictions, this is a massive liability, selective enforcement. Once you create a system with loopholes, enforcement becomes arbitrary. One applicant might get grilled on webcam, forced to reveal their face and voice. Another might waltz in without any check at all. That's not fairness. That's inconsistency by design. False sense of security members who think, "This server is safe, everyone here is 18 plus, are being misled. The sponsor loophole means they can't actually trust that rule. And when people think they're safe when they're not, that's when the worst mistakes happen. Hypocrisy in action. Here's the hypocrisy. Publicly, GXD presents himself as a responsible leader, saying no under 18 like it's a hard line. Privately, he undermines that very rule by letting people skip the checks. It's a double standard, and it reveals a lot about how GXD operates. He wants the appearance of strictness without the responsibility of actually enforcing it. He wants the authority of making rules without the accountability of applying them fairly. And when confronted, he can always point back to the public rules and say, "See, I said no minors." But the evidence tells a different story. The evidence shows a system built on contradictions, where the rules are only applied when convenient and ignored when they get in the way. Loopholes are not accidents. Here's something important to understand. Loopholes like this don't happen by accident. Nobody writes no under 18 in one place, then privately says, "You can skip if vouched," without realizing the contradiction. That's intentional. That's a choice. Why? Because loopholes give power. When you create a rule with exceptions, you create a hierarchy. You decide who gets the exception and who doesn't. You decide who has to expose themselves and who gets to walk in free. You become the arbiter, the gatekeeper, the one who gets to say yes or no. And for someone like GXD, that power is the point. It's not about safety, it's about control. The bigger picture. When you zoom out, you can see the pattern: alias switching, using Slade to blur accountability; fake verification, demanding faces and voices without any real safeguard; sponsor loophole, contradicting the no under 18 rule by allowing skips. Each one on its own would be a red flag. Together, they form a picture of a system that isn't built on responsibility or protection at all. It's built on illusion, an illusion of safety, an illusion of professionalism, an illusion of authority. But when the rules are contradictory, when the enforcement is arbitrary, and when the very leader is hiding behind aliases, that illusion falls apart. And when it does, the truth is exposed. This isn't about safety, it's about control, deception, and manipulation. Section 4. Privacy and legal risk. Up until now, we've looked at how GXD masks responsibility with aliases, how he stages fake verification rituals, and how he undermines his own no under 18 rule with loopholes. Those alone are enough to question his leadership and the safety of his server. But here's where things go from bad to worse: the legal and privacy risks. Because what GXD is demanding from applicants, their faces, their voices, their names, their dates of birth, is not just sloppy or invasive. In many places, it's potentially illegal. Biometric data. What it means. Let's break this down in plain terms. When you ask someone to show their face on camera, move their head, speak into a microphone, You are collecting biometric identifiers. Biometric data means physical characteristics or unique personal identifiers. Things like faces, voices, fingerprints, iris scans. These aren't just any pieces of data. They're sensitive data. And because they're sensitive, they're heavily regulated. Governments all over the world, from the US to the EU, have strict laws about how biometric data can be collected, stored, and used. And here's the key. None of those laws allow random Discord server owners to demand biometric checks without consent, safeguards, and compliance. What the laws say, let's talk specifics. GDPR, European Union. Under the General Data Protection Regulation, biometric data is considered sensitive personal data. That means you can't just ask for it casually. You need explicit consent, a lawful basis for collection, and strict protections for storage and use. GXD has none of that. BP, Illinois, USA. The Biometric Information Privacy Act is one of the strictest in the US. It says you cannot collect or use biometric identifiers without written consent, disclosure of how it will be used, a policy on retention and deletion. Violations carry fines of $1,000 to $5,000 per person per violation. CCPA/CPRA, California, USA. The California Consumer Privacy Act, expanded by CPRA, gives residents specific rights over their biometric data. Companies, and yes, even individuals running services, can't collect biometric identifiers without consent and transparency. Svipe, Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. This one is crucial. Discord itself requires members to be 13 plus, but servers like GXD's specifically bar under 18s. If a minor under 13 is pressured into a webcam or voice check, that's a direct violation of CPRA, which prohibits collecting any personal data from children without verified parental consent. The bottom line is simple. Demanding faces and voices from applicants is not compliant with these laws. And because GXD doesn't have written policies, doesn't obtain consent, and doesn't follow any recognized framework, his so-called verification could absolutely be seen as a violation. Discord's own terms. And that's before we even get to Discord's terms of service. Discord doesn't allow servers to create unsafe or invasive practices for their members. Demanding biometric checks without any of the safeguards that professional age verification systems use falls squarely into unsafe territory. If Discord were presented with these screenshots, it's hard to imagine the server surviving an enforcement review. This isn't standard moderation. It's invasive, unnecessary, and reckless. The double risk. Here's what makes this so dangerous. GXD's verification system isn't just invasive, it's also ineffective. On one hand, he's demanding personal biometric data from strangers without legal safeguards. On the other hand, he's allowing people to bypass the system entirely if vouched for. That means he's exposing people to risk and failing to keep minors out at the same time. Think about that. He's managed to create the worst of both worlds. Invasive for honest members, ineffective against dishonest ones. That's not safety, that's negligence. The possibility of exploitation. Now let's address the elephant in the room. What happens to that data? When someone shows their face or speaks into their mic for GXD, what's stopping him or anyone else in the studio from recording it? What's stopping them from storing it, reusing it, or even misusing it? The answer is nothing. There are no safeguards, no privacy policy, no oversight, no transparency. Members are being asked to expose their identities on trust alone to someone hiding behind aliases and excuses about shared computers. That's not just irresponsible in us, it's reckless. And once data is out there, it's out there forever. You can't undo it. You can't unshare your face. You can't unspeak your voice. That's why laws exist in the first place. because biometric data is too sensitive to be left in the hands of amateurs playing at authority. The illusion of legitimacy. Here's the cruel irony. GXD claims that this process is to protect from lawsuits. But the truth is the exact opposite. By creating a fake verification system that demands biometric data without safeguards, he's opening himself and his server up to massive liability. If a minor slips through the sponsor loophole, he could face consequences for allowing underage access to NSFW content. If an adult realizes their biometric privacy rights were violated, he could face fines under state or international law. If Discord gets wind of these practices, his server could be banned outright. This isn't protection, it's exposure. Exposure to legal risk, exposure to platform enforcement, exposure to scrutiny. Why this section matters. This is why we have to talk about laws and privacy, because it's not enough to just say, this feels unsafe. We have to recognize that what GXD is doing doesn't just feel wrong, it is wrong. And in many places, it's likely unlawful. He's demanding data he has no right to demand. He's failing to protect the very people he claims to protect. And he's doing it all while hiding behind aliases, contradictions, and excuses. That's the reality of the so-called verification system. It's not safety, it's not protection, it's a liability factory. And every single person who goes through it is put at risk, legally, personally, and privately. Section 5, Shifting Narratives. If there's one theme that runs through everything GXD does, it's this. The story always changes. The rules shift. The names change. The excuses pile up. And every time he's confronted with evidence, instead of owning up, he rewrites the narrative. It's a pattern. And patterns matter, because patterns show us intent. The ever-changing rules. Let's start with the rule book. If you've been following along, you already know how contradictory the rules are. Publicly, it's no under 18 members. Privately, it's friends can skip verification. But it doesn't stop there. Whenever GXD gets called out, the rules themselves change. One week, the focus is on banning underage members. The next week, the verification details get tweaked. Then suddenly there's a new clause about shared computers. Every rule update is a reaction, not a proactive measure. It's like he's patching holes in a sinking ship, one leak at a time, never addressing the bigger problem. The ship itself is rotten. And the irony? By rewriting the rules so often, he's immortalizing the very drama he claims he wants buried. Every new clause is a reminder of the last scandal. Every edit is proof that the rules were broken before. The watcher as the boss. At one point, GXD tried a different tactic, passing the buck. He claimed that the watcher was now the boss, the one in charge of the server. On paper, this sounds like he stepped back. It sounds like he let someone else take the wheel. But then you look at the evidence. Applications are still being handled by Slade. Interviews are still being run by the same account. Verification still comes from the same source. So what was the point of naming the watcher as the boss? Simple. To distance himself. To create another layer of plausible deniability. If someone gets upset, if Discord investigates, if members question the system, GXD can say, well, I'm not the boss anymore. That's the watcher. But the reality is clear. He never stepped down. He just renamed the position. The control was always his. The shared studio computer excuse. And then there's the infamous shared studio computer claim. In updated rules, GXD said that multiple people on his team all post from the same computer in their so-called studio. That's why the account names might change, he argued. That's why Slade could be a different person, even though it's the same account. But think about how absurd this is. In an era where every person has a smartphone, where Discord accounts are free, why would a team of people, allegedly running a community server, all use one computer and one account? They wouldn't. That excuse exists for one reason: to blur accountability. If you can't prove who typed what, then nobody's responsible. If Slade and GXD are all using the same account, then any questionable action can be deflected. Oh, that wasn't me. That was someone else in the studio. It's not a real system, it's a smokescreen. The core contradiction. Here's the contradiction at the heart of it all. Publicly, GXD insists he has stepped back, that others are running things, that he's not in control. Privately, under Slade, he's still conducting interviews, still enforcing verification, still changing rules. That's not delegation. That's deception. And when you see this pattern, aliases, scapegoats, excuses, it becomes impossible to believe anything at face value. Every time he says, "I'm not in charge, we're Hans," the evidence shows otherwise. Every time he says, "This is for safety," the evidence shows loopholes and contradictions. A reactive leader. The truth is, GXD isn't leading. He's reacting. Called out for unsafe verification? Change the rules. Exposed for using an alias? Invent a story about shared computers. Criticize for overreach. Hand the boss title to the watcher. It's always the same cycle. React, rewrite, deflect, repeat. And what does that tell us? It tells us he knows these practices are wrong. If he thought he was in the right, if he believed in the system, he wouldn't need to keep rewriting the story. He wouldn't need to keep hiding behind names. This isn't the behavior of someone confident in their leadership. It's the behavior of someone scrambling to maintain control, even as the evidence piles up against them. Why it matters. Some people might wonder, why does it matter if he calls himself Slade or says the studio uses one computer? Isn't it just names? But it matters because names are about accountability. Rules are about trust. Leadership is about responsibility. When the names change, when the rules shift, when the stories contradict, that's how you know you can't trust the system. If a leader can't be honest about who they are, if they can't be consistent about the rules, if they can't own up to their own decisions, then everything else crumbles. The illusion of safety collapses. The promises mean nothing. That's why this section is so important. Section 6, naming individuals in the rules. One of the strangest and frankly most unprofessional things GXD has ever done is this. He literally baked personal drama into the server rules. Let that sink in. The rules are supposed to be the neutral foundation of any community. They're supposed to set clear expectations. No harassment, no spam, respect one another, follow age limits. That's what rules are for. They're the baseline everyone agrees to so that the community can function smoothly. But GXD twisted that purpose into something else entirely. Instead of keeping the rules clean and professional, he turned them into a soapbox for his grudges. At one point, he directly named individuals, including me, right in the middle of the rulebook. Imagine you're a brand new applicant. You've never met anyone in the server. You're just filling out the application, expecting to see guidelines about acceptable behavior. And then suddenly there it is, a personal feud spelled out in the very text that's supposed to welcome you into the community. That's not moderation. That's not leadership. That's obsession. It's petty. It's vindictive. And above all, it's unprofessional. Because what happens when you drag personal beef into the rulebook? You guarantee that every single applicant, every single potential new member sees your dirty laundry before they even say hello. You frame the community not as a safe space, but as a battlefield for your grudges. You turn what should be a neutral onboarding process into a personal hit piece. And here's the irony, the part that makes it even worse. By trying to warn people or set the record straight through the rules, GXD actually immortalized the drama he wanted buried. He cemented it into the foundation of the server. Instead of fading into the past, those grudges now live forever in the very first document every new member reads. That's not protecting the community. That's poisoning it. It tells new members that this isn't a community run on fairness or professionalism. It's run on personal vendettas. It tells them that the rules don't apply equally to everyone. They're weaponized against whoever happens to be on GXD's bad side at the moment. That's not leadership. That's self-sabotage. Because in the end, rules are supposed to elevate the community. But in GXD's hands, they became a tool for obsession, for rewriting history, for taking shots at people he couldn't let go of. And by doing that, he didn't just expose his lack of professionalism. He broadcast it to every single person who ever applied to join. Section 7. The misuse of legal sources. Whenever GXD gets cornered about his so-called verification process, he doesn't admit fault. He doesn't own up to the fact that what he's doing is invasive and unnecessary. Instead, he scrambles for cover. And his favorite shield is the illusion of authority. He'll post links. He'll cite articles. He'll drop blog posts and Q&A threads into the chat as if they're proof that his methods are not just acceptable, but legally required. To the casual eye, it looks convincing. Most people won't click through every link or dig into the fine print. They'll just see a wall of sources and assume, wow, he must know what he's talking about. But the moment you actually look at those sources, the truth becomes obvious. He's cherry-picking. He's twisting headlines and half-truths into excuses. And none of the links he uses actually back up his claims. In fact, the only one that does matter completely contradicts him. Let's go through them one by one. 1. Boston 25. News link. This is a local news article reporting on U.S. states that have passed age verification laws for adult entertainment websites. States like Louisiana and Utah now require sites like Pornhub to check government-issued IDs before granting access. Why it matters? Yes, it's true. These laws exist, and they're aimed at reducing teen access to online porn. Why it doesn't apply to GXD? These laws are narrowly scoped to commercial adult platforms. They target billion-dollar porn companies that profit from adult entertainment. They do not apply to hobby Discord servers, fan communities, or gaming groups. By citing this link, GXD misrepresents reality. He's trying to ride the coattails of laws that were never written for him. He's twisting legislation aimed at porn giants into justification for his own DIY webcam checks. That's not legal compliance, that's opportunistic misdirection. 2. Neal Davis Law link. This one's even weaker. It's a blog post from a criminal defense law firm. All it does is summarize statistics, like the fact that 68% of teens aged 13 to 17 have seen nudity online. Why it matters? Sure, it shows why lawmakers are thinking about age verification. It's background context. Why it doesn't apply to GXD. This isn't law. It isn't binding. It isn't even policy. It's just commentary. A blog post on a law firm's website has no more legal weight than a random article on Medium. 0. Using this to justify collecting biometric data is laughable. It's like citing a Wikipedia page to defend running your own DMV. It's meaningless. 3. Marketing Heaven link. Now here's where it gets interesting. This article actually talks about Discord's own policies. It explains that NSFW servers must be age-gated, that users must be 18 plus, and that Discord enforces these rules. Why it matters? Because this is the only link in GXD's pile that directly connects to Discord. And it's true, Discord does have policies for NSFW servers. Why it doesn't support GXD? Because Discord already has a built-in system for this. When you flag a channel or server as NSFW, Discord automatically restricts access to accounts that are set to 18 plus. That's the enforcement. That's the compliance. Admins are not supposed to bypass that system with homemade webcam rituals, third-party ID checks, or invasive profiling. In fact, doing so can itself be a terms of service violation. So ironically, the only relevant link in GXD's arsenal is the one that undermines him completely. It proves Discord already has the tools, and that his overreach is unnecessary at best and dangerous at worst. 4. Stack Exchange link. Finally, there's the Q&A thread from Stack Exchange. Someone asked if Discord server owners need to demand IDs to allow access to adult content. The consensus answer was clear: no. Server owners don't need to play verification cop. Discord itself handles the process. Owners are responsible for marking channels NSFW and enforcing rules, not for collecting IDs or personal data. Why it matters? Because it clarifies the real expectation. Owners must use Discord's system, not invent their own. Why it doesn't apply to GXD? GXD twists this into sounding like Discord wants him to collect IDs or biometrics. But the thread makes it clear: responsibility is about using the built-in tools, not bypassing them. His interpretation is a distortion. The bottom line. Here's the bottom line. GXD is cherry-picking. He's pulling random articles, blog posts, and form answers, stacking them up like they're a legal foundation for his actions. But they're not. The Boston 25 News article applies only to porn sites. Not him. The Neal Davis Law Blog is just commentary, zero legal weight. The Marketing Heaven post directly contradicts him because Discord already has NSFW gating. The Stack Exchange thread proves the opposite of what he claims. Owners aren't supposed to collect IDs. The only real authority in this entire pile is Discord's own policy. And that policy is simple. Mark the server NSFW and let Discord handle the age gating. By trying to play verification cop, by demanding faces, voices, and personal details, GXD isn't protecting anyone. He's overreaching, he's misrepresenting, and he's exposing himself and his server to even more risk. Because at the end of the day, these links don't give him any legal authority to act like an age verification service. They do the opposite. They highlight that what he's doing is unnecessary, unsafe, and possibly a violation of the very platform he's on. Section 8. The fake corporate backing. One of the most desperate tactics GXD has used to justify his invasive verification system is name-dropping legitimate companies like Svipe. Now let's be clear, Svipe is a real business. They provide ID verification services to banks, governments, and other organizations that actually have a legal need to process sensitive documents. They're designed for things like opening a bank account, verifying your identity for government benefits, or logging into secure financial services. But what Svipe is not designed for is verifying random people who want to join a Discord server. That's where GXD comes in. He's dangled the idea of partnering with Svipe as if that somehow validates his system. He wants people to believe that by throwing Svipe's name around, his invasive checks suddenly become legitimate. But here's the truth. He doesn't have the credentials. Svipe doesn't just hand out partnerships to anyone who asks. To even begin using their services, you need to be a legally registered business. You need licensing. You need contracts and compliance audits. You need legal frameworks in place for handling the most sensitive personal data people have. Their IDS GXD has none of that. He's not a business. He doesn't have licensing. He's just a guy running a hobby server out of a renovated room in our grandparents' old house. It's a smoke and mirrors tactic. By dropping Svipe's name, GXD tries to give his system corporate credibility. He wants members to think, oh, if they're working with Svipe, this must be official. But it's not. There's no evidence of a partnership, no integration, no contract, just talk. It's brand name clout chasing, nothing more. It contradicts his own system. Remember, he constantly says, we don't ask for ID. His entire verification process is webcams, microphones, and the sponsor loophole. If that's true, why bring up Svipe at all? Because he knows how weak and illegitimate his system looks. So he tries to borrow legitimacy from a real company that has nothing to do with him. That's not consistency. That's desperation. It raises massive red flags. Imagine for a second that he somehow did try to use Svipe or a similar service. That would mean funneling people's government IDs, passports, driver's licenses, national IDs, through a process tied to his Discord server. That would be a catastrophic privacy risk. No one signed up for that, no one consented to that, and it would absolutely violate Discord's terms of service. No licensing, no business, no legitimacy. And this is where it all comes crashing down. Because even if you set aside the aliases, the fake age gate, the sponsor loophole, the privacy violations, even if you take all of that off the table, you're still left with the most obvious fact of all. GXD is not a business. He has no licensing. He has no corporate entity. He has no legal framework for collecting or processing anyone's personal data. He's not bound by data privacy regulations like a bank or a government office, because he's not authorized to play in that space at all. He's just a private individual trying to dress his server up as something more. And that's what makes this so dangerous. Because when someone without licensing, without compliance, without oversight, starts demanding things like your name, your date of birth, your face or your voice, you have zero protection. If that data is misused, leaked, or abused, you have no recourse. There's no company to hold accountable. There's no policy to enforce. There's no legal contract to back you up. It's just GXD, Adrian, Nuke, The Watcher, and anyone else affiliated with his branding. And GXD, none of them are qualified, licensed, or authorized to do any of this. The bottom line. So the next time you hear him name drop Svipe or try to align himself with laws meant for billion-dollar adult platforms, remember this. He's not a partner. He's not a company. He's not licensed. He's just a guy pretending to be an authority he isn't, misusing the names of real businesses to make his unsafe and illegitimate system look credible. That's not leadership. That's fraud by association. Section 9, the final pattern. So let's step back and look at the big picture. What do we have? An alias shuffle, Slade, the studio, the team, all smoke and mirrors to dodge accountability. A fake verification system, webcam checks, mic checks, and a sponsor loophole. Invasive and ineffective at the same time. Contradictory rules. Publicly, no under 18. Privately, friends can skip. Privacy and legal risks. Demanding biometric data without safeguards, while twisting blog posts and news articles into fake authority. The misuse of sources, cherry-picking headlines that don't apply, while ignoring Discord's actual built-in protections. The false corporate backing, dangling names like Svipe, pretending to be a business when he has no licensing, no entity, no legitimacy. Emotional manipulation, reframing his invasive demands as protecting the community while guilt-tripping applicants into compliance. The reputation spiral. Rewriting rules, renaming accounts, and blaming others, ensuring the drama he once buried never dies. When you put all of that together, you see the pattern. This isn't leadership. This isn't safety. This isn't protection. It's deception. It's manipulation. It's control. Why this matters? And here's why it matters, because communities like this thrive on trust. Members join thinking they're in safe hands, thinking the rules mean something, thinking the leader has their best interests in mind. But when the leader abuses that trust, when they twist safety into control, when they demand personal data they have no right to, then everyone is at risk. Members are at risk of privacy violations. Discord is at risk of liability, and GXD himself is at risk of exposure, enforcement, and consequences. This isn't just bad management. This is reckless. This is dangerous. And it's all being hidden under layers of aliases and excuses. The call out. So here's the call out. GXD, you don't have the right to collect biometric data. You don't have the authority to demand people's faces, voices, names, or dates of birth. You're not a business. You're not licensed. You're not Svipe. You're a single person running a server out of a spare room, pretending to be something you're not. And by doing so, you're not protecting your community. You're exploiting it. The closure. So the next time someone hears about GXD adventures, they need to know the truth. Not the polished branding, not the smoke and mirrors. The truth. That behind the aliases, behind the fake verification, behind the misused sources and the shifting rules, there's no legitimacy, no professionalism, no authority, just one man trying to look bigger than he is and putting his entire community at risk in the process. And that's why this expose exists, because people deserve to know, because transparency matters, and because the only way to stop the spiral is to shine a light on it. This has been the expose. This has been the truth behind GXD, and this is why it matters.